thank you so much for the choice of this short story, for the reading in Hindi. I could see a lot of eyes, all the people who could understand Hindi in the audience, eyes brightening up, and ears tickling for the ones who did not understand Hindi and could listen to its musicality. So I think it was an extremely good choice to have the Hindi reading at first and the Laura for reading the story. So making the connection, in fact, between your first presentation, Satya, and the poem also you brought in, maybe one of the very general questions that we can ask, and that is actually foregrounded in the poem itself, is the question of modernity and the global stage, the global scene, because the poem itself, there is a global part. And you are here reading in Britain, you're used to traveling around, you're used to the Indian scene, you're used to the international scene as well. How do the two connect, interact? What are the challenges of this? Dalit literature and Dalit studies are extremely specific and emerge from a very specific social and political context. And at the same time, what is the good, in fact, in bringing it out of India? What can be the challenges of that? What can be the negative aspects, the negative impact? There is a lot of resistance as well. I mean, it's all, these very general questions that I would like you to address. And this question is both for Satya and Wajid.
It's a very large issue.
Sorry. Simple question. Very simple question.
Yeah, not a simple question. But one important point is that many times Dalit literature is described local and specific. But in fact, the attitude of the Dalit writers has always been global. In fact, they have not found resources within India to challenge those discriminatory practices. If you take from Pule's time in the 18th century or even later, I mentioned about Dalit writers' attitude to colonialism, that the reform and the ideas of modernity. So historically they have been always open to this because of the fact that locally they cannot challenge this. And also Ambedkar's argument is that Ambedkar and Pule both argued that there were no resources of democratic thinking within India. So though in the end Buddhism and all that they brought up, but I think their major kind of concepts and theoretical kind of ideas come from elsewhere, not necessarily from only one country, the West, but several kinds of countries. So even the writers, so the writer's point is that not that we are local and the Marxist writer is a global, but you are a global writer, you don't talk about this. And we have always been saying anybody can discuss this, but what about this? So in that sense, so they really have to kind of fight a long way both within the country and with the onset of globalization. There are actually very serious kind of debates between the Dalit intellectuals and the mainstream left and other intellectuals. Because Dalit intellectuals have taken an entirely different view of globalization. Basically saying that, okay, globalization is going to destroy this country. This is the left writer's argument. So Dalit writers were taking a strategic view. You see that if it destroys, what is it going to destroy? Maybe it will destroy the dominant groups, the major industry, the local industry. So what is there for us to lose in this? So there may be some space when you have the global processes taking place. There may be some space for us to do something else, as it happened in the colonial times. It's not that the global processes are coming to help the Dalits, but obviously they are coming with new ideas, a different kinds of a system. So within that system, there are maybe some spaces available. That is where I think they really made a good use of that context by coming to Durban and then other global conferences in US, and again the whole discussion in the UK now on this discrimination and caste and so on. So all these discussions really tells you that they have not only argued at the local level, that it is local specific Hindu kind of oppression, but also it is a global kind of oppression. So especially the equation between the racial discrimination and caste discrimination. So in that sense, this global process. So in fact, they have, from the times of the colonial times to now, they don't have, I always make this point, that they don't have absolute stand. The Marxists have always absolute positions on anything. Globalization is totally bad, we are totally opposed to this. But they are very much within the global paradigm. They have to live with all the modern amenities, technology and industry, and they have to work in all the multinational companies. But they have always been hypocritical when they say that we are opposed to totally and so on. But Dalits have taken a strategic stand. We have to see how it unfolds. So within that, what is the space? Because they don't have the resources to say that we don't want this, we'll oppose this. They have no force of that kind. But on the other hand also, if you say, for example, you totally oppose this, but what are we gaining? So within the society, you don't have a space. Obviously, you want to see that there is certain kind of a churning happening, conflict happening within that, there are possibilities. So in that sense, all these campaigns, starting from the 90s to now, so those campaigns also given us new languages. Because the whole argument about caste untouchability is that it is tradition, custom and religion. And it's so naturalized that you have imbibed it, you have internalized it, and you can't question it. And internalization not only in the village, but when it comes to a situation like this, Ajay's story. So it is about your own identity, about your own past, about your own Ambedkar as a leader of kind. But the problem still is haunting. Dalit middle class is kind of haunted by this ideas. So though what I was saying was applicable to the village India, but those ideas are very much alive in the modern context, in various kinds of forms. So and you really have to develop new kinds of languages. That it is equal to racial discrimination. It is discrimination. It is as per the UN Convention. It is human rights violation. So the language of human rights, language of segregation, language of democracy. So all these languages they will place. And in this kind of process, I think literature really plays a kind of a very interesting role, because they have also developed several kinds of languages and concepts, and also several dimensions of these forms of inequality which are not visible in the theoretical writing, because the existing paradigms are paradigms where you can't see this.